Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Ultimately, Metro Vancouver's got a lot of answering to do.
Troubling questions.
Big tidal wave.
The accidental release of water from the Cap Dam leaves one dead, another missing. Also,
I'm going to Walter Reed Hospital. I think I'm doing very well.
U.S. President Donald Trump flown to hospital after testing positive for COVID-19. And
even such of a popular place cannot survive.
heartbreaking closure. An icon in Vancouver's struggling Chinatown shuts its doors.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
good evening. The search is continuing tonight for a man swept away by a massive wall of water yesterday in a North Vancouver river.
He apparently could not escape the torrent of water accidentally released from the Capilano Dam. As we reported last night, a man he was with was killed.
Dozens of people were fishing and hiking in the area when it happened, and several had to be rescued. As Greg Rasmussen reports, Metro Vancouver officials are trying to figure out what went wrong.
It's not supposed to look like this. Water gushing out of a dam above the Capilano River.
We all heard it first and then looked upstream, and there's this wall of water coming towards us.
Mike Hannafin was lucky. He watched as 5 people fishing on the edge of the river managed to scramble to safety.
It was very obvious at that point that it was not going to be safe for any of those people to be there.
The water came rushing down this canyon, and it rose so quickly that people down below on the river simply didn't have time to get out of the way.
One body was recovered, and a search is underway for a possible second victim.
Our hearts go out to all of the friends and family.
Nick Nuri watched one man desperately clinging to a slippery rock as waters rose around him.
Water came up so high that he had to hang on to the rock above him not to be swept away. One wrong step and he would have been gone.
Even 4 kilometers below the dam, the change in the river was dramatic. Metro Vancouver, which operates the facility, says a crew was doing maintenance work on the dam shortly before the incident.
When a major failure like this occurs, it generally is a combination of both human error and system error or malfunction.
At the dam, friends of the missing man gathered as questions remained about the lack of a warning system in one of Vancouver's most popular recreational areas.
Ultimately, Metro Vancouver's got a lot of answering to do about what happened. I know they're starting an investigation, but that's really serious. Like, to not have a fail-safe.
The river's flow is back to normal, and people are once again fishing with a wary eye upstream. Greg Rasmussen, CBC News, North Vancouver.
And we go live now to our Tina Lovegreen, who is in North Vancouver near the Cleveland Dam.
And Tina, you've been there most of the day speaking to locals and police. First, what's the latest on the police investigation?
Well, what we know is that a second man was swept away, a man who was 27 years old, and friends I spoke with say he had previously attended a secondary school, Handsworth Secondary School, which is nearby. And, you know, just before we got an update from North Vancouver RCMP, there was a very touching moment between the North Vancouver RCMP spokesperson and the group of friends who had come down to hear what update he would give them. Of course, the contents of that conversation private, but it certainly looked like an emotional one.
It's sad. You know, I really feel for people in this situation who, you know, words can't express how difficult it is when something so tragic happens.
Again, search and rescue crews were here yesterday and again this morning looking for the man in his late 20s and were unable to find him. We also know that the person who died was a man in his 40s, and the BC Coroner Service is investigating that case.
Tina, just so tragic. And as Greg mentioned, though, in his story, people are back on the river today fishing, and you spoke with some of them. What are they saying?
Yeah, Lien, I mean, people were back fishing along the Capilano River. We even saw one person jump into the river. And, you know, RCMP say the same warnings apply. If you come down here, you need to be prepared. But the fishermen we spoke to say, you know, they are prepared for water levels to rise, but not like this, not so rapidly, not so unexpectedly. And I spoke to a father and his son who come down fishing here maybe 5-6 times a week. And his 17-year-old son was actually fishing here yesterday around the same time. And they say, you know, this, of course, hits close to home, but they say it was unpredictable. There was no way they could prepare it, and it's not going to stop them from coming back again.
It really makes you think that you have to have a backup plan. Whenever we go wading on the river, I try and have a plan that you stick to in an emergency in case something goes wrong. But I just don't think there's anything you can do to prepare for a situation like that.
So a lot of people, including the friends of the missing person, are searching for answers, wanting to know exactly what happened here. And we've been told that multiple investigations are on the way to figure out what exactly happened and why this happened. We've been told it might have been a combination of mechanical and human error. Mike, Leanne?
All right, thanks, Tina. Tina Lovegreen reporting live for us from the Cleveland Dam tonight.
U.S. President Donald Trump is in a military hospital tonight after being diagnosed with COVID-19. The First Lady also has coronavirus.
And our Dan Burrett joins us live now in studio. So, Dan, much of the world watching for updates on the president. What do we know so far today?
Well, Trump tweeted out his and the First Lady's diagnosis just before 10 o'clock our time last night. A statement from his physician said the pair would be staying at the White House during their quarantine. But earlier today, it was announced the president was going to a hospital. Trump left the White House in a mask this afternoon with a thumbs up. He didn't speak with reporters, and he walked to the helicopter Marine One, ready and waiting to fly him to Walter Reed Military Medical Center in nearby Maryland. Late last night, his doctors said the president was given a dose of an experimental antibody cocktail that is still in clinical trials. He said Trump was fatigued but in good spirits. The White House says the president will stay at the hospital for a few days as a precaution and plan to work from there. Trump and the First Lady's diagnosis comes after a top aide tested positive for COVID-19 and after the president returned from a political fundraiser yesterday. He didn't tell the crowd there, though, that he had been exposed to an aide who was infected. Then this video appeared of the president on Twitter this afternoon.
I want to thank everybody for the tremendous support. I'm going to Walter Reed Hospital. I think I'm doing very well, but we're going to make sure that things work out. The First Lady is doing very well. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. I will never forget it. Thank you.
World leaders, including Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, have sent their best wishes to Trump and his family. Trump has consistently downplayed COVID-19 and insisted the worst of this pandemic is over. He's also resisted wearing masks or keeping his distance. COVID-19 has now killed more than 200,000 Americans and 1 million people worldwide. We'll bring you any updates on the president's condition throughout the show. Mike, Leanne?
All right, Dan Burrett reporting live on this tonight, and we will have much more on this developing story later in the hour. In the wake of the diagnosis, the Trump administration is getting criticism for holding public events earlier this week. And as Dan mentioned, Prime Minister Trudeau has wished the U.S. president a speedy recovery, having seen firsthand the effects the virus can have. And the CBC's Paul Hunter is in Arizona tonight with reaction from voters in that key swing state for the fall election.
And here in BC, there's also some cause for concern. The province and Dr. Bonnie Henry announcing 3 more people have died due to the virus.
That brings BC's death toll to 238. There's also a spike in new cases, with BC recording its second highest single-day count. 161 new cases being reported, but nearly 12,000 tests were performed, which means the positivity rate remains under 2%. Active cases back up over 1,300, and the number of people under public health monitoring is now over 3,100. 63 people in hospital, 6 fewer than yesterday, 16 in intensive care. Well, it might seem counterintuitive during a pandemic with sky-high job losses, but the real estate market is booming.
Record sales in Greater Vancouver and the Fraser Valley this September. They are breaking records.
As Deborah Gilbert reports, that started pushing prices higher.
Trying to understand the real estate market in Greater Vancouver and the Fraser Valley has never been easy. There are always signs, but what they mean is definitely open to interpretation. But this September, in the midst of a pandemic and huge economic uncertainty, the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver set a new record high. More than 3,600 homes sold. That's a 56% increase over last September.
Full steam ahead, except for that short period, March to June of this year, when everything kind of more or less shut down.
And it's the same story in the Fraser Valley. The real estate board there says it recorded the highest numbers of sales for September in its entire history.
Who's not buying in the Fraser Valley right now? We have people from overseas, people from Vancouver, and even local people.
I've also had word from my peers that they're seeing their clients that are moving from townhomes or condos in Vancouver and moving out to the valley where they can buy a detached home. It's more affordable. You do get way more bang for your real estate dollar.
Even the experts and academics weren't expecting this. Supply and demand are always the first place to look. Then there's the speculation tax, crackdowns on money laundering, all factors. But it's the cost of borrowing money these days that seems to really be making a difference.
The cost of money is on sale right now, and that's definitely helping consumers to get out and afford more property.
Mortgage rates are so low right now, so it's a good opportunity for people. It gives them a little bit more buying power.
And there's working from home. COVID-19 has made a lot of employees rethink those long commutes. Those expensive tiny condos in downtown Vancouver can buy a lot more space farther out.
With the cost of living in Vancouver versus the cost of living in the Fraser Valley, we're seeing more and more people attracted to Fraser Valley.
What's going to happen next in the real estate market? Who knows? Following the signs is a good place to start, but never underestimate the power of the unexpected. Deborah Goebel, CBC News, Surrey.
After spending yesterday in Vancouver, both Andrew Wilkinson and John Horgan took their campaigns to cities outside the Lower Mainland. The Liberal leader, Wilkinson, was in Merritt, pitching policies that would benefit the interior, including boosting the forestry industry and stopping protesters from blocking approved resource projects like the Trans Mountain Pipeline.
It's really not acceptable to have permitted projects that then go on hold indefinitely because of a few protesters. There are ways to deal with that, and if people don't like the project, then they can use the courts to try and get a judicial review of the project.
Meanwhile, John Horgan was in Squamish, where he said a re-elected NDP government would legislate net zero carbon emissions by 2050. He says his support for projects like the LNG plant line up with plans to reduce the province's greenhouse gas emissions.
We have a plan that includes everybody, and we want to make sure that our industrial emission profile is as low as it can possibly be, and that means we have to push on other parts of the profile to bring those emissions down. We believe that LNG Canada fits that profile.
And Green leader Sonia Furstenau stayed close to home on Vancouver Island, where she was critical of how the NDP plans to deal with climate change.
Say to British Columbians that John Horgan can't be trusted to take action on climate when he has doubled down on subsidizing the oil and gas industry, subsidizing fracking in this province.
The three party leaders will go head-to-head in the first televised debate on October 13th.
And this week's death of an Indigenous teen in government care in Abbotsford has been pressed onto the campaign trail.
All of the party leaders say youth in care must be a top priority, but advocates are skeptical the issue will receive adequate attention this election. Our provincial affairs reporter Tanya Fletcher has more.
All of the party leaders addressed the tragedy involving the 17-year-old First Nations youth who was discovered dead in his closet this week, but not without prompting. We asked each of them what their government would do to better protect Indigenous youth in care.
Our commitment to kids in care, particularly Indigenous children, is to revitalize the Kith and Kin program to make sure that children are not apprehended and taken away from family. So it's a core function of government to make sure that Indigenous youth are looking at a world of opportunity. Higher education is critically important for Indigenous youth to get them into the workforce and leading a life of prosperity.
And we have to turn to Indigenous communities and say,
Bring us your solutions. And our job is to support and fund those solutions.
Many advocates are pushing for the issue to be front and center during this election. One of them is a former foster parent of Alex Gervais, the teen who jumped from the window of an Abbotsford hotel that he was living in while in government care. Since his death in 2015, Alan Huliaf has put forward several recommendations. He even addressed this with John Horgan at a town hall during the last provincial election. And now he has this message for the politicians in this campaign.
It needs to be more family focused. It needs to be more preventative. So preventing kids from going into care, working with families to make sure they get the resources they need to address whatever the issues are that they're experiencing.
We also spoke with an Indigenous youth worker in Surrey who points out that many Indigenous children are apprehended due to issues of poverty. And once they go into care, there's suddenly ample support available that wouldn't otherwise be provided.
They get financial resources, they get respite, counseling, daycare, and if we were going to keep the children with the family, they wouldn't receive anywhere near that level of support.
She says there is still pervasive inequity in the system as a whole that needs to be addressed no matter which party forms government. Tanya Fletcher, CBC News, Vancouver.
A man has been arrested after a fatal stabbing in the Whalley area of Surrey. Surrey RCMP responding to an assault with a weapon call at a home just after 10 o'clock last night. Officers arrested an adult male who surrendered to police. First responders treated a critically injured man inside the home, but he died from his injuries there. Police say the incident stemmed from a dispute between the two. The suspect remains in custody, but no charges have been laid yet as the investigation is ongoing.
A judge in BC says the sale of Mountain Equipment Co-op to a private American investment firm will be allowed to proceed. Some members of MEC went to court looking to delay the sale. They wanted time to try to put together an alternative plan. But this morning, the judge ruled the sale to Kingswood Capital Management is allowed to move forward. MEC had been struggling against the online competition and filed for creditor protection before announcing the sale last month.
All right, let's bring in meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe now. My unscientific method in determining how we're doing on the smoke is based primarily on how well we can see the North Shore Mountains behind you, and it looks pretty good tonight.
That's not a bad litmus test at all, Mike. Yeah, I think this is proving that air quality is not bad tonight across most of the South Coast. We had the fog this morning. We've lost the high cloud from yesterday, so still hazy in the background. I'm looking at the air quality health index right now, and it is predominantly very low, except for Metro Vancouver Northeast, basically exactly where I'm standing. The level is at 4 on the 1 to 10 plus scale, which is just pushing into the moderate level. This is where I think we'll sit over the next 36 hours, just in pushing in that low to moderate area, not looking to see extreme, but a couple of gorgeous sunsets and sunrises on tap for you. Let me show you the temperatures across the board right now. We are still warm, 16 at YVR, 21 out towards Abbotsford. Look for some morning fog again tomorrow. We are still under that ridge of high pressure. You can see the stream, the edge of that pressure moving into Haida-Gwaii and central coastal sections. It will continue to stay off to our northwest over the next few days. So I have warm temperatures for your Saturday across southern BC. And by Sunday, a bit of a westerly flow should sweep out any of that lingering haze. So Mike and Lien, when you look to the North Shore Mountains over the next couple of days, should be clear.
Well, that's fantastic news. All right, Joe, thanks very much. We'll talk to you again in a little bit. Well, an iconic restaurant in Vancouver's Chinatown is shutting its doors.
After more than 3 decades in business, Goldstone Bakery won't be reopening even after the pandemic.
And the concern is many other businesses in the historic neighborhood are facing the same fate.
As a restaurateur, Ray Loy gets how hard it's been to manage a business amid the pandemic. The latest casualty, one of his childhood favorites, Goldstone Bakery and Restaurant.
To hear that they're closing is just not very good news at all.
He remembers weekly visits with Mom as a 6-year-old after a visit to the Woodward's toy department.
We would have, an old school baked pork chop on rice, which is a Hong Kong style cafe staple, and have Hong Kong milk tea. And that was probably one of my fondest memories, to have that meal at Goldstone.
Not much has changed over 3 decades at Goldstone, not the menu or even prices, but the number of patrons has shrunk dramatically, much like the rest of Chinatown. The ongoing struggle has forced the owners to sell and hopefully downsize.
I'm very sad, because this is a real landmark for the current gathering of all people in Chinatown.
Richard Wong says the restaurant is still beloved as a community hub, stemming from its heydays in the late 1980s, when this was the spot for a new wave of Hong Kong immigrants and their families.
It reflects the economy in Chinatown is deteriorating to the level that even such of a popular place cannot survive. So that is a serious matter.
Wong is worried the pandemic is the last nail in the coffin, a shared concern for many of the businesses in the area. He believes more development is the solution to attract consumers with spending power, but there are concerns over affordability. In the meantime, community groups are pleading for emergency measures.
How do we remove barriers to accessing Chinatown? And what that means is in terms of parking, foot traffic, how do people make people feel safe?
Removing fees, increasing patrols, and emergency funding are all part of the group's request to all 3 levels of government. Support, they say, that's critical to a neighborhood on the brink.
Hopefully the government steps in to help them, because this pandemic might be a last blow to them, and if they don't receive any help, they might be gone forever.
The hope is Goldstone may one day reopen, but like Chinatown, its future remains uncertain. Lien, Yeung, CBC News, Vancouver.
Good report. I don't think a lot of people necessarily realize how desperate the situation is there.
It is, and full disclosure, that place is a special place in my heart. I grew up going there very often with my family, even through university. I went and had breakfast there almost every day before class with my mom, and it was $10, and you could have a bowl of noodles, 2 egg sausages, plus a bun and a milk tea for under $10. So there's that affordability factor there, of course. Right. And it was just a community hub, like so many of the people that I spoke to says. So, it's an important spot for the community, and I hope that one day they'll reopen. But the fate of all of Chinatown is something that we should be watching. All right,
sad to see that one go for sure. All right, just a reminder, you can also watch this newscast live on the free CBC Gem app.
That's right, CBC Vancouver, also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, and you can find the both of us there.
Well, a fast-moving day in Washington, D.C., from a president in good health to needing hospitalization. How the day unfolded and what's next will take you south of the border just ahead. And thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream tonight. Well, a major virtual conference is just wrapping up today.
Thousands of students and an array of post-secondary institutions are addressing issues around anti-Black racism and Black inclusion. As CBC's Deanna Sumanak-Johnson explains, they want to create a strategy for institutions to tackle both.
Binta Cisse says she never thought of her skin color while in her native Gambia, but she was made aware of it when she enrolled at the University of British Columbia. Last year, the African Caribbean student club she belongs to was accused of stealing a debit machine lent to groups for events.
We were also stressed out because there was a $1,000, I think, fee. And yeah, it turned out that she gave it to someone else.
Experiences like hers aren't rare in Canadian universities.
Being a Black student comes along with a lot of challenges and barriers.
Which is why today and tomorrow, 54 of Canada's post-secondary institutions are engaging in what they're calling National Dialogue on Anti-Black Racism. 3,000 participants, faculty, students, and administrators will engage in virtual sessions meant to bring difficult issues into the open.
How do we make sure that we create pathways for people to come into the institutions, but that when they're there, they're supported to thrive, that they're enabled to be the best of themselves.
The goal of the gathering is to produce a charter of policies and best practices that all participating institutions will sign.
I was told several times to go back to my country.
This author of an autobiographical book on race on campus says the initiative is a good start.
There's been a lot of saving face. Schools have been doing town halls and putting reports together for a long time. So I'm hoping that this time it actually sticks, that there's some regulations around it.
Binta Sise, for one, is hopeful.
Imagine going through university and your experiences are not good at all. It's also going to affect your frame of reference when you go out into the world.
A step towards fixing up the institutions that pride themselves on openness and nurturing of young minds, all young minds who enter them. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
Much of China lit up in a kaleidoscope of color last night to mark its National Day in recognition of the 1949 formation of the People's Republic. Buildings across the country were transformed into glittering beacons, landmarks glowed, and scenic spots were illuminated in rainbows of light.
This year's celebration coincided with the traditional Mid-Autumn Festival, a period of lots of travel and tourism. In Guangzhou, in southern China, about 1,000 drones were used to create images in tribute to the nation's medics. Throngs of travelers in every part of the country came out to take in the shows. Quite spectacular, yeah.
Remember seeing that in the early 90s when I lived in Hong Kong. They even lighted up there.
Cool.
Okay, back in just a couple of seconds, lots more news, including all those developments from south of the border with Donald Trump and his COVID-19 diagnosis. After downplaying COVID-19 and often foregoing the use of a mask, U.S. President Donald Trump is now in hospital with coronavirus.
And as we mentioned earlier in the newscast, Trump will spend the next few days there as a precautionary measure. Susan Ormiston looks at what led to this extraordinary development.
President Trump showing symptoms of a developing illness. Since last night, he's had a fever, nasal congestion, and a cough, aides say, and he's fatigued. But on Twitter,
I think I'm doing very well.
It was an extraordinary image. Marine One carrying the president sick with COVID-19 to Walter Reed Medical Center as a precautionary measure. Earlier, his doctor had given him a shot of an experimental antibody cocktail, the highest dose allowed, as the White House scrambled to corral the damage.
As all of you know, the President and the First Lady tested positive for COVID-19. They remain in good spirits.
A mammoth job now, contact tracing a widening circle of Americans who've been close to the president this week, when he would have been at his most contagious before symptoms appeared,
The virus,
including at Tuesday's debate where he mocked Biden's mask.
like him, every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from it. He shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen.
He traveled to his golf course in New Jersey just yesterday for an exclusive fundraiser with donors.
I had to be COVID-19 tested. Everyone did. Who was going to be that close to the president.
But by then, it was Trump who was likely carrying the virus. A close advisor, Hope Hicks, had already fallen ill with COVID-19, so why was Trump cleared to travel?
It was deemed safe for the president to go. He socially distanced. It was an outdoor event, and it was deemed safe by White House operations for him to attend that event.
Trump's team is recalibrating as Joe Biden resumed his campaigning in Michigan.
My wife Jill and I prayed that they'll make a quick and full recovery. This is not a matter of politics. It's a bracing reminder to all of us that we have to take this virus seriously.
Susan Ormiston reporting tonight from Washington, D.C. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau extended his best wishes to the U.S. President and First Lady, and in doing so, he made a reference to his wife's COVID-19 diagnosis back in March.
When I woke up this morning, I was apprised by my team that the President and the First Lady had tested positive. Of course, my first thoughts are in support of them, and I hope for a speedy recovery. They had certainly reached out when Sophie got her diagnosis earlier in the spring.
And meanwhile, in the U.S., parts of the country are also wishing Donald Trump well.
And as Paul Hunter tells us tonight, Arizona is one of those states, and it happens to be a battleground in the upcoming election.
In a dusty, open field on the outskirts of Phoenix, the tent is packed with Trump 2020 t-shirts, ball caps, bumper stickers, you name it. At the Trump Patriot pop-up store, the morning after Donald Trump tested positive for COVID, business is booming.
I bought a t-shirt and 2 tank tops.
Michelle Simpkins tells us Trump's gonna be just fine. He'll get past COVID, she says.
Does this change your thinking about Trump in any way?
No, I'm still voting for Trump. That will not change. No, he's done so much for the public, for the people. He is not racist. He's turned the economy around. He's turned the recession around.
With the election now just a month away, the battleground state of Arizona has become a focal point. Historically Republican, for weeks, Joe Biden has held a slim but steady lead in the polls here. Today, word of Trump's illness seemed to harden the resolve of Trump supporters. Many, even today, shopping without masks, as if in solidarity, convinced Trump will see this through, and that all the talk the president's failed to lead on COVID, nonsense.
The Democrats are spewing their garbage about, oh, he failed us, oh, he did. Well, excuse me. When this virus broke out, China's the one to blame. China is the one, not the president, that brought this here.
I think he'll come out of it just fine. I still think he's a much stronger, healthier person than a Joe Biden.
In nearby Scottsdale, away from the Trump merchandise, evidence Arizona is indeed no longer a lock for Republicans. There's sympathy for Trump on a certain level, but recognition, all those rallies promoting going maskless, clearly comes with a price Trump himself is now paying.
Oh, 100%. Not only did he take this risk, he encouraged his constituents to take the same risks, whether it be through his rallies or just telling them alternative ways that were unproven to cure the virus.
Say Trump critics today here and elsewhere, the hard truth is he had it coming. No one wishes ill on anyone else, but they say it's a reminder on this issue and others, it's time for someone else in the White House. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Scottsdale, Arizona.
And from Arizona to central Canada, and a record no one wanted to see.
Ontario reporting 732 new cases of COVID-19 today and a ballooning backlog in tests for the disease.
In response, the Premier has announced new measures to get a handle on the situation. Mike Crawley walks us through the tightened but still murky rules.
The buzz from Queen's Park this morning had Premier Doug Ford making a major announcement at his daily briefing on COVID-19. Flanked by more advisors than usual, Ford begins with a somber tone.
As Premier, it's my duty to protect the people.
Yet the new measures Ford announces prove far less sweeping than what many public health experts are demanding. Indoor mask rules, already in place in much of the province, are extended to all of Ontario. Toronto and other hotspots get a few extra restrictions.
Restaurants, bars, and nightclubs in Ottawa and Peel must limit their capacity to 100 customers or less.
But that's actually higher than the restaurant capacity limit already imposed in Toronto. This comes as Ontario surpasses its single-day record for new cases of COVID-19, and the 7-day average keeps soaring upward. Social contact is considered a big driver of the surge in infections. The province is asking people to pare that back. But does it mean don't go see your folks at Thanksgiving? The tag team answer is far from clear.
I'll pass that over to the Minister of Health. What we're saying is keep the social circles tight.
We want people to keep their gatherings small, but I think I'll refer this to Dr. Heyer or Dr. Williams.
I think everybody has to think carefully about where they're going to and what they're doing and assess the potential risk, assess the potential chance for transmission.
We want to say smaller. You have to refocus back down because we said 10, but people with 10, another 10, and 20, 30, and they just went open on that, and we have a problem now.
The Premier translates.
I think what he's saying is just keep your circles tight now. That's what I think he's getting at.
Here's what the government's news release says. Have close contact only with the people in your household. With everyone else, keep 2 meters away. The government was considering shifting Ontario to a new color-coded system for the risk from COVID-19. Regions would be declared as red zones or orange, yellow, or green with restrictions to match. But Premier Ford shot down the idea, saying it would be too confusing. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
The federal government is easing some border restrictions to allow some family members of Canadian citizens and permanent residents to enter the country.
These measures will include people in an exclusive, long-term relationship and their dependent children, as well as non-dependent children, grandchildren, siblings, and grandparents.
They still have to quarantine for 14 days here. The new measures will take effect next Thursday.
BC's election debate is set for October 13th. Coming up, we'll talk to the moderator about what she'll be asking and what she's watching for.
Battle to control British Columbia's raging forest fires is far from over. Weary firefighters, exhausted from the heat and flames, are doing their best. But every day, more and more of BC's prime timber gets eaten up. And today, thousands of people are on alert in case they have to leave their homes. Brenda Craig has the latest report on the situation.
It seems as if these fires are British Columbia's very own hell on earth. More than 700 fires are burning. 40 of those are out of control and racing through the province's mountains and valleys. An estimated 33,000 hectares of BC's best timberland has been wiped out. That's an area half the size of Prince Edward Island. And in the southeastern corner, BC's vacation paradise, the situation is critical. In the rugged Columbia Valley area between Golden in the north end and Cranbrook in the south, 35,000 hectares have burned to the ground in a week. For now, the towns and the 50,000 people in the valley are safe, but a blue smoky haze from the big fires nearby reminds everyone of the threat. Last night, strong winds pushed two of the biggest fires closer together, but suddenly there was a merciful reprieve.
This morning, the fire boss said it was about 3 kilometers between the fires. There's one drainage between them.
It was cooler today, but 2 towns, Kimberley and Fairmont, are still on the evacuation alert list. 2 fires are climbing the ridges behind the popular tourist towns, but for now, they are safe. The big fire is called Ram. In a week, it has done as much damage as all the other fires in the valley put together. Killing these fires is extremely difficult.
The key problems are problems that we have no control over whatsoever. Namely, I can sum it up in one word: the weather.
Lots of thunder, but never any rain. Just sparks that set more fires overnight. Most of the fires start this way. Sometimes it's just the 35-degree heat and a dry wind, and suddenly there's another fire and not enough people to stop it. Hundreds of men eat and breathe smoke 14 hours a day. Most had no idea what it would be like.
This is my 5th day here, and we've had 6 hours sleep in 5 days. And they expect us to operate properly, and you know, we're half asleep on our feet out there.
We have just a desperate organizational situation here. And you know, I've talked to some of the firefighters too, and I've seen what has been happening, and we very definitely do have a problem. And there's no use kidding about it.
Forest fires are nothing new to British Columbia, but this one, the one that's got hold of the Columbia Valley, has run away on a province that usually can stand up to the worst of them.
And I don't think any of us, myself included, have the experience and background to anticipate the kind of catastrophe that we're facing here.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
We could hear this roar coming at us from upstream. We all heard it first and then looked upstream, and there was this wall of water coming towards us.
One person is dead, another is still missing after yesterday's sudden release of water from the Capilano Dam in North Vancouver. Metro Vancouver officials say the release was accidental and are investigating. Dozens of people were fishing and hiking in the area when it happened, and several had to be rescued.
I'm going to Walter Reed Hospital. I think I'm doing very well, but we're going to make sure that things work out.
Less than 24 hours after revealing he has coronavirus, U.S. President Donald Trump is flown from the White House to a nearby military hospital. White House officials say the hospital visit is precautionary. They also say Trump is fatigued and had been injected with an experimental antibody cocktail by the White House physician.
And Dr. Bonnie Henry is reporting 161 new cases of COVID-19 in BC today. 3 more people have died, bringing the death toll to 238. 63 people are in hospital, with 16 of them in intensive care. Public Health is monitoring more than 3,100 people who are in self-isolation due to potential COVID-19 exposure.
BC's political party leaders will be going head-to-head on key election issues in a televised debate October 13th. And moderating that debate is Shachi Kurl. She's the president of the Angus Reid Institute, and she joins us now. Shachi, this has been a very different election campaign, of course, because of the pandemic. What are you expecting going into this debate?
Well, I guess the key is to always expect the unexpected. But Mike, to your point, this really has been a very different campaign. We haven't been able to see the rallies, the kind of, campaign stumping, the bus tours, the whistle stops, and all of the other things that enable party leaders and candidates to connect with voters and build up a little bit of momentum and give voters at the community level a chance to maybe come out, listen to a speech, and kick the tires. So this debate is for many voters going to be the first opportunity they've had to really take a good, especially strong look at some of the opposition leaders who are going to be participating and reacquaint and refresh themselves as well with the Premier and his policies. So it is going to be a crucial portal for information, provided the leaders actually focus on information.
Yes, always important. Now, we did witness the challenges that moderators can face in the last presidential debate. How are you going to try to manage these differing voices and personalities come the 13th?
Well, Mike, I ask you to pray for me. No, but seriously, what I would say is that, look, I've watched BC politics for a long time throughout my career, both as a political journalist and now doing what I do at the Angus Reid Institute, measuring opinion. I am no Pollyanna, but I do have an expectation and a faith that the leaders of the main parties who are going to be debating are capable of doing so in a spirited way, in a vigorous way, but also doing so in a respectful way. So, Chris Wallace talked about wanting to be invisible. I think the learning from that is to try to obviously not make the debate about you. It's not about me. It's about BC voters. So being there to be assertively fair and to try to really keep the train on the rails, so to speak, as needed, but to do so in a way that really brings out the best in these leaders and challenges them to make the best case and the best pitches and give the most thoughtful conversations around why they deserve to form government. Right, meaning the issues should be at the forefront. What do you see as the most important ones for BC voters? Well, I'm watching the issues, obviously. It's not just up to me to decide which issues will be brought up during the debate. There are a large team of some of the best political journalists in British Columbia who are all working as part of the consortium to plan that out. But, if you take the COVID pandemic response out of the mix, and yes, that is so crucially top of mind for BC voters, I think there are still a lot of other issues that are sort of under the surface that we haven't been talking about as much. The opioid crisis, affordability, inequality, the economy, pipelines, LNG, the Site C project. So lots of things that have been on the back burner and on simmer, but are no less contentious and indeed in many ways haven't gone away. They've just sort of floated into the background for now. And this will be a good time to have, again, a really good and clear airing of those issues, where the leaders stand, and how they think they'll do things better and or differently.
All right, we're anxious to see how it'll all play out on the 13th. Shachi, thanks very much for doing this. Shachi Kurl, president of the Angus Reid Institute, is going to be moderating the leaders' debate on Tuesday, October 13th.
A holiday destination on edge. Wine country north of San Francisco is bracing for strong winds amidst a deadly fire season. What forecasters are predicting next.
When your backyard is burning, is anywhere safe? I'm Adrienne Lamb, the host of a new podcast, World on Fire. Join us on the front lines of wildfires burning around the world. Find it wherever you get your podcasts.
The glass fire continues to rage in Northern California tonight, scorching its way across the state's wine country.
24 major wildfires continue to burn in California. And as we've been talking about this week, that smoke is here in BC.
Yes, CBC News meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe has been tracking these fires and their impact here all week and joins us now. Joe, what's the latest from California tonight?
Well, still out of control fire tonight. As you mentioned, it's the glass fire that is bringing the biggest problems, only 6% contained. We did see some lighter winds last night, but still a ways away from the rain. They're under the same high pressure ridge that we are. I want to show you the latest pictures from the glass fire over the past 24 hours. Red flag warnings remain in place. In fact, they've been extended to Saturday, and those are the warnings that indicate gusty winds. You can see the steep terrain in these pictures. This is what firefighters have been working against. But winds actually died down slightly overnight, and that helped firefighters sort of bolster the defenses, and they were able to protect communities to the south where the winds were pushing the fire. So holding steady as far as numbers of structures burnt. You can see how exhausted, though, firefighters have been battling this one for almost a week straight. Almost 600 structures have been destroyed with this fire alone. Take a listen to how impactful this one fire has been.
Obviously, the glass incident is a complex incident. It's impacted, as far as fire damage, 2 different counties, 3 different cities, multiple communities have been impacted. Damage destroyed, and damaged structures, with population that's been evacuated, several road closures, including road closures in Lake County, so that adds a 3rd county to this.
Huge impact over there. And here in our province, Joe, new numbers out show that it's been the smokiest summer in recent history. When will that clear up?
Yes, we're dealing with the second round of smoke. Most of those numbers from Victoria and Vancouver showing that in the last quarter century anyway, for total hours of observable smoke for places like Victoria and Vancouver, almost and over 200 hours so far this summer, not counting the last stretch we've seen. Luckily, as I mentioned earlier, air quality is not too bad. We're not seeing at lower levels. Let me show you the big picture across the country, because that ridge really holding that smoke in place. And it's really just BC and Alberta under the influence of that ridge of high pressure. You can see those warm temperatures in the west, cool in central and eastern Canada. In fact, frost warnings in place for the city of Toronto tonight. Watching for some drizzle in through Tofino for tomorrow. But the westerly winds that we get in on Sunday, there's just a slight chance of an early morning shower. A cloudier start to your day on Sunday. By the afternoon, we should be back to the sun. And this is about the extent of our dry forecast. I'll bring some rain back in for the second half of the week, but we'll talk about that on Monday.
Yeah, let's leave that till Monday. Enjoy it. Enjoy it for now. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Okay, normally when we hear about plastic pollution, it involves the ocean.
But Canadian research estimates about 20 million pounds of plastic ends up in the Great Lakes every year from both sides of the border.
As Ali Chesson explains tonight, officials are hoping technology that's been tested successfully here in BC, Halifax, and Toronto can be the solution to its pollution problem.
There we go. We as the U of T trash team, our role as a partner in this initiative is to develop a protocol to try and analyze and characterize all the litter that we're finding. So we collect data to identify the product and material type. From that, we can try and find out where these sources, where are they coming from and what their sources are.
These sea bins have been around for a couple of years now, sucking up trash, maintained by marina staff and analyzed by researchers like Cassandra Sherlock.
At first glance, if I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, okay, plant matter, that's not too bad. But it's what gets tangled up in here.
Exactly. What we do is we'll sort through all the big stuff we can easily see, like this paper wrapper or the plastic bottle, and we sort that out. And then we'll wash the plant material, and in the bucket, all the small stuff will rise.
Small stuff, big problem. These are pre-production pellets.
The pellet itself, that gives us an idea that it's coming from upstream from plastic industries. So those are used to mold and make plastic water bottles.
They've been found and they've been ingested by wildlife, which is dangerous.
How do they end up here?
Just through going down the watershed.
So these sea bins are strategically placed where runoff tends to pool. And the program is expanding. By the end of this month, they'll be in 23 marinas across Ontario, accompanied by these things in storm drains, litter traps.
What kind of stuff does it catch?
Oh, you name it. It's very site dependent. Imagine you're outside a supermarket chain, you're going to see a lot of receipts, a lot of plastic wrappers, these kind of things. If you're near a plastic manufacturer site, those little plastic pallet nurdles are a really big issue at the moment.
Litter traps plus sea bins are a 1-2 punch on plastic pollution. And this isn't just a cleanup program.
It's giving us an idea of where the source is. And so then we can use this data and this evidence to go and inform policy that they need to be responsible for when these things end up in our water and in our aquatic ecosystems, and they can hurt our wildlife.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
As talents go, let's just say this one is very unusual. Meet the Galloping Girl of Edmonton. Next.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell. Here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Join CBC Vancouver's Gloria Makarenko for a special edition of the Splash Art Auction and Gala. Get your tickets and help support Arts Umbrella programming. Learn more at artsumbrella.com. And don't miss the Mothers Matter Centre's 20th anniversary celebration on October 21st. Celebrate courageous Canadian mothers who have overcome unique educational, linguistic, and cultural barriers. Get your tickets at mothersmattercentre.ca.
Well, a gallop, a canter, maybe even a little show jumping.
Yes, a young Edmonton woman has earned international acclaim for an unusual skill. 17-year-old Ava Vogel can perfectly emulate the movements of a horse.
You heard that right. She spends her days galloping through her backyard on all fours, a, quote, weird talent that has landed her in the pages of Ripley's Believe It or Not. Here's a look at some of her viral moves.
A lot of it was just trying to mimic our horses as best as we could. About 6-7 years ago, I started riding actual horses, and from there I was involved in a lot of community with my barn friends, and we discovered that we all had this cool talent where we could all jump over obstacles, just like a horse on all four legs, and I kind of fell in love with it. I thought it was a pretty universal talent. I thought like pretty much anybody could, but when I started posting these videos online in about 2016, I realized that I was kind of one of a kind. I was able to jump pretty high, and from there I kind of kept going to see how high I could go, and I've reached almost 4 feet now, which I'm pretty proud of. In the future, I think it'll always be some kind of like cool party trick I can say and I can do, hopefully. Honestly, it really has helped my confidence. I was pretty shy as a kid, and I think posting myself online, especially in this kind of like weird and unique way, has really shown me that it's okay to be different and it's okay to express myself.
Oh my gosh. I don't know what I just saw. What was that?
Yeah, I mean, just when you think you've seen, well, pretty much everything, along comes Ava Vogel. I mean, she's definitely committed to the plan here.
This is why she's in Ripley's Believe It or Not, because I can't believe what I just saw.
There you go.
The trot. That was unbelievable.
Time for us to trot our way out of here, because it's the weekend, but Dan will be here at 11 right after the National.
Have a good weekend.
Bye.